I'm going to talk about business models for open source, because that's one of the parts that lies really, really close to my heart. Just doing business. As a small kid, I used to actually count money and just be really, really fond of those parts. Later on, I have gotten to know that money has actually no value at all, but adding value does, and getting stuff done faster is the key point. So Odd Hill is actually my and Adam, who founded Odd Hill with me, our second company. We started in 2007 a company called Loom that is now not our company and not a big company, taking 3D printed modules and stuff. And when starting Loom, we took two decisions for that company. We started by buying a bookkeeping solution called Visma for, I think it was 12,000 Swedish kroners, and then a support agreement connected to that part and a licensing fee. And we started to build our web page in Drupal, an open source CMS system. I'm going to go back to those parts later on, because they're quite telling for business models and why I like open source as a business model. So we actually have this part of our webpage on Drupal and the part of Visma SPC as a proprietary software. And we have some three basic differences here. In closed code base, no way of getting into the code base of the Visma system, and to Drupal, which we two young guys, 23 and 21 years old, could just get down. We could, of course, not change anything in Visma at all, and we had all the freedom to change and develop the code base for our own web page. And we could, of course, not sell Visma or use it in any way that they did not allow us to do in the licensing agreement. But with Drupal, we could actually do anything since it was licensed by open source license. This actually led us to our work at building up Odd Hill as a digital production agency who does work and consultancy work in open source projects. And basically, in my point of view on open source versus proprietary software, we have some major differences in business models. We have really, really large investments. For example, building a new economical bookkeeping program by yourself is a really, really big cost. And in open source, you actually have the possibility to get a lot of people involved and contributing. And this actually makes for some different parts on how you must get your money back. Because if you have put in a lot of investment in something, and then you really want to have a lot of money back. And in this part, we actually have those license-based revenue and on just licenses, where in most and many open source business models, we have actually revenue based on work and services. And we also have a part of controlled partners when we are actually talking about the closed software and closed code, which if we would have wanted to start in SharePoint or Episerver as two young guys, we would have had no possibility at all to do that. while on Drupal part or open source CMSs, we actually could just get in and do and build our businesses. And we actually can see some really, really crazy things like, for example, paying on a site, a public site, paying for how many visitors you have, a license fee based on that. To me, that's kind of like building a house, and then some guy is going to ask you for money each time you click on the lamp switch, because he had invested money in that some time ago. So, just a short note on business models when working with open source. The first one on consulting and implementation is where we're at. We're actually doing work for others. But thanks to actually using open source and using those parts, our customers own the code, and we actually get a much closer connection to our customers and actually can join hands in development even. Then we, of course, in our ecosystem, we don't have that company that provides the documentation and training, but we have a number of other companies providing that service and actually building up their business model on documentation and training. For example, a platform called Lullabot that just distributes training that our employees can use, and we actually do that without having one who has the monopoly on doing those trainings. And then, of course, we have support and subscriptions. That is really, really good for way of actually earning from open source software. And dual licensing, which is a part of actually being able to have an open source license and then enterprise licenses. And I think that Neo4j has a lot of those parts integrated in the business model, and actually being able to get the benefits of open source and actually building a really viable business on that part. And then, of course, distributions, actually selling a pre-installed package on a server and charging for server space. What makes all of this just go together is that we actually have a fair business model that is actually most based on work actually being done and not on having a monopoly of some code. You actually, in open source business, by the licenses foundation of actually wanting to distribute parts, you get to go in a much fairer business model. So how I think this will affect the industry and how it is affecting the industry is that I think that large closed suppliers are going to see a competition that they have never seen before. And I think that they have gotten a little glance of how big that competition can be, but I don't think they have even seen the start of it. We still have in our world is on content management systems, a lot of proprietary software that actually have their developers hired and without having the connection to the community, and then just the whole part of paying money. But then we have 97,000 Drupal developers that are contributing without having that. And you actually can't fight that because you don't only get better use from coders and a larger scale, but you also get an innovation process in these parts that you can't see anywhere else. Because if we as an agency see a problem, we will solve it. And perhaps we will not have the best solution at first, but if the problem has been seen from 20 or 40 agencies over the world, in the community it's going to be the one that's best, that's actually going to be integrated later. And this also makes the speed of developing new solutions is going to increase rapidly. And I don't think that any company that actually just pays salaries for their development can compete with that. So I see a picture. The most important part of this picture has vanished. It's a part of GitHub and open government. And just looking at those kinds of projects where we actually also go into functionality where we can use distributions of code and reuse the code is going to be a really, really great thing for saving money. It's going to put a lot of problems for the largest companies who have built or sold software many times to many government agencies at the same time. And we also, of course, have the problem with licenses that are unfair. For example, we have Oracle, who has gotten into a lot of problems for they have so complex licenses agreements that actually have no real sense of work being done to support the license agreements. It's only complex license agreements that have, yes, we did this investment a couple of years back and now you're going to pay for it, basically. And then just for the wrap up of it is that open source is not at all anti-commercial. It's only anti-lock-in. It's actually a better way of doing business because you can actually add value to every hour spent on development for everyone. And there's no way to compete with that if you're not on that way. Oh, that was all.